My name is Emma Parker. I'm 34, and the last words my mother Karen ever shouted at me were, "Get out!" She didn't whisper it. She didn't say it in private. She screamed it in front of my brother Ryan, my Aunt Linda, my cousin Tyler, and anyone else who happened to be in the living room that night. Everyone stared at me like I was the one who had committed a crime. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't bargain for love like it was a discount at a checkout counter. I picked up my bag, walked to the door, and left. The next morning, I bought a beach house, paid in full, with the inheritance my grandfather Henry left me in a trust they didn't even know existed. And I walked away without a single goodbye. Let me rewind, because if you've ever been the strong one in a messy family, you already know how this story starts. In my family, love was never free. Love came with invoices. Love came with rules. Love came with a price tag that changed whenever someone felt entitled. Karen called it family values. Ryan called it loyalty. Aunt Linda called it helping. Tyler called it what I deserve. I called it what it was, control. Growing up, I learned to read the temperature of a room the way other kids learned math. If Karen was smiling too widely, something was coming. If she was quiet, something was brewing. If she started talking about what people will think, it meant she was about to shame someone into obedience. I went to college on scholarships, worked part-time, and moved into a tiny apartment with secondhand furniture and stubborn pride. Grandpa Henry was the only person who never tried to own me. He wasn't perfect, but he was fair. He didn't weaponize affection. When I visited him, he didn't ask me for money. He asked me what I wanted from life. He listened when I spoke. He remembered small things, like how I hated the taste of burnt coffee and how I liked my pancakes thin. When I was 21 and Karen told me I'd never make it, Grandpa Henry just put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Emma, people reveal their true face when you stop being useful. Don't be afraid of their faces." I didn't understand that line fully until the night Karen threw me out. It started with a phone call on a Tuesday afternoon. Karen sounded sweet, the way she did when she wanted something. "Sweetheart," she said, "your cousin Tyler is in trouble again." I could hear Aunt Linda in the background, sniffing like she'd been practicing tears. "What happened?" I asked, even though I already knew. Karen sighed dramatically. "He's behind on rent. The landlord is threatening eviction. Linda is beside herself. We just need a little help. Just this once." I paused. "How much is a little?" Karen hesitated. 12,000, she said, like she was asking for bus fare. My jaw tightened. 12,000 wasn't a little for anyone I knew. I'd worked months to build a small emergency fund because I didn't have anyone to catch me if I fell. I said, "No." Karen went quiet. Then her voice hardened. "Excuse me?" she asked. I repeated it. "No, I'm not paying Tyler's rent." Karen snapped. "He's family." I said, "So am I, and nobody paid my rent when I was working nights and studying." She said, "That's different." I said, "No, it isn't. Tyler keeps choosing chaos, and you keep paying for it. I'm done." She inhaled sharply. "Come over tonight," she said. "We'll talk face to face." The word talk sounded like a threat. When I arrived at Karen's house, my stomach sank. Everyone was there. Ryan sat with his arms crossed, looking like he'd already made up his mind. Aunt Linda sat on the couch with her eyes red and her hands twisting a tissue. Tyler leaned back in a chair like he owned the place, scrolling on his phone with the relaxed arrogance of someone who always gets rescued. Karen stood in the middle of the room, not sitting, not relaxed, performing authority. Karen started with a speech. "We are a family," she said. "Families support each other. Families don't turn their backs when someone is struggling." Aunt Linda sniffed on cue. Tyler put on a wounded expression like he was the victim of injustice. Ryan said, "You've changed, Emma." I replied, "I've grown a spine." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Don't be disrespectful." Karen turned to Tyler. "Tell Emma what's going on," she said. Tyler sighed dramatically. "I had some bad luck," he said. "The economy is rough. Jobs are hard. I'm trying. I couldn't help it." I asked, "Trying what, Tyler? Trying to post photos from bars while your mom begs for rent money?" Tyler's cheeks reddened. Aunt Linda gasped like I'd slapped him. Karen barked, "That's enough." Ryan leaned forward. "You think you're better than us because you've got a stable job," he said. "But we're your blood. We're not strangers." I said, "Blood doesn't give you the right to drain someone." Karen's face tightened. You're being selfish, she said. I replied, I'm being honest. Aunt Linda started crying, loud and theatrical. I can't believe this, she sobbed. After everything we've done for you. I asked quietly, what have you done for me lately, Linda? Besides call me when Tyler needs a bailout? Karen's eyes flashed. Watch your mouth, she said. The room felt thick, like a storm trapped indoors. Tyler finally put his phone down and said, if I were you, Emma, I'd help. Karma is real. I almost laughed at the irony. Karen stepped closer to me. You will give Linda the money, she said, not as a request, but as a command. No, I said again, calm and clear. I won't. Karen's voice rose. You ungrateful girl, she shouted. You act like you're too good for us. You're not. You came from me. Ryan stood up, pacing, feeding the fire. Just pay it, he said. You can afford it, I replied. You don't know what I can afford. Tyler smirked. You can afford it, he repeated, as if he had access to my bank account. Karen pointed toward the hallway. Then leave, she said. If you can't support this family, you don't belong in it. I expected manipulation. I expected guilt. I didn't expect the explosion. Karen marched to the hallway, grabbed my bag, and threw it toward the front door. Get out, she screamed. Her face was red. Her hands were shaking. Aunt Linda stopped crying long enough to watch, satisfied. Tyler's smirk widened. Ryan's expression didn't show surprise. It showed relief, like removing me solved a problem. Karen hissed, You're not my daughter if you can't help us. Something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. I nodded once. Okay, I said. I picked up my bag. I walked to the door. Behind me, Tyler laughed. She'll be back, he said. Ryan added. She always comes back. I didn't turn around. I walked outside into the cool night air and sat in my car. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I wasn't shaking because I doubted myself. I was shaking because I finally understood that the love I'd been chasing was a mirage. They loved access. They loved control. They loved the version of me who said yes. I drove home to my little apartment and stared at the ceiling. The silence was loud. My phone buzzed with messages I didn't open. I thought of Grandpa Henry. I thought of his calm eyes and his simple advice. Then I opened my drawer and pulled out an envelope from Bennett and Cole, a law office I'd never heard of until the day it arrived. It had come 2 months after Grandpa Henry's funeral, mailed directly to me. I hadn't told anyone. Not Karen, not Ryan, not Linda, not Tyler. I'd kept it like a secret lifeline. I broke the seal again and reread the letter. It said my grandfather had established a trust and that I was the beneficiary. It asked me to call to discuss distribution options. I'd been scared to call, not because I didn't want it, but because I knew what it would trigger if my family found out. That night, after Karen screamed, "Get out," I realized the decision was already made. If they wanted me out, fine. I would leave, and I would build a life they couldn't trespass. I called the number. A calm voice answered, "Bennett and Cole, how may I direct your call?" I swallowed. "My name is Emma Parker," I said. "I received a letter about my grandfather, Henry Parker." The voice softened. "Miss Parker," the receptionist said. "One moment." A click. Then a man's voice. "Emma," he said, as if he'd been expecting me. "I'm Michael Bennett. I'm sorry for your loss. We've been waiting for your call." I exhaled shakily. "Is this real?" I asked. He replied, "Yes. Your grandfather was very precise." He explained the trust in simple language. He said Grandpa Henry had planned for taxes, for timing, for protection. Then he said something that made my spine straighten. "Your grandfather included a clause. If anyone attempts to pressure you into handing over funds, or if you experience intimidation regarding this inheritance, our firm is instructed to intervene. Your inheritance is yours, legally." I felt my eyes sting, but I didn't cry. It wasn't sadness, it was relief. Grandpa Henry had known my family. He'd built a shield, Bennett continued. "We can release funds in stages, or, if you'd like, you can use a portion now for a primary residence purchase. Your grandfather believed a stable home would protect your future." A home. Karen had screamed, "Get out." Bennett had no idea how perfect the timing was. I asked, "How soon?" Bennett said, "We can meet tomorrow morning. If you already have a property in mind, we can move quickly." "I didn't have a property," but I had an idea. I wanted a place that felt like healing. I wanted air that didn't taste like old arguments. I wanted waves to drown out guilt. I wanted a beach house. That night, I barely slept. I didn't scroll social media. I didn't respond to messages. I made a list. Step 1. Secure my inheritance legally. Step 2. Buy a home in my name only. Step 3. Cut off access. Step 4. Build peace. I woke up before sunrise, drove to Bennett and Cole, and sat in a clean office that smelled like paper and coffee. Michael Bennett greeted me with a firm handshake and kind eyes. "Emma," he said, "your grandfather spoke highly of you." I smiled faintly. "He was the only one who did," I replied. Bennett slid documents across the table. He explained each line. I signed slowly, carefully, with the seriousness of someone signing a new life into existence. When the papers were done, he said, "Now, about the residence. Do you have an agent?" I didn't, but Bennett gave me a referral. "Sophia Morales," he said. "She's discreet, efficient, and she understands privacy." I called Sophia from my car. She answered on the second ring. "Sophia Morales," she said. I introduced myself. I told her, "I'm looking for a beach house. I want something quiet. I want a place I can call mine, and I want to close quickly." Sophia didn't ask unnecessary questions. She just said, "What's your budget?" I told her I wanted to use a portion of my inheritance, paid in full if possible. Sophia whistled softly. "Okay," she said. "Let's do this the smart way." Within hours, Sophia had listings. She sent photos. Soft sand, wide windows, small balconies, and one house that made my chest loosen. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't an island estate. It was a solid, beautiful home with a view of the water and a quiet street that didn't feel like chaos. Sophia said, "This one is priced fairly. It's been on the market a bit. We can make an offer and move fast." I said, "Make the offer." The offer was accepted that afternoon. The next morning, I returned to Bennett and Cole and signed the closing documents. A wire transfer from the trust paid the full amount. No mortgage, no debt, no strings. Bennett handed me the final paperwork and said, "Congratulations, Emma. You own your home." I held the papers like they were sacred. Sophia met me at the property with a small smile. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded. She unlocked the door and stepped aside. The house smelled like salt air and fresh paint. Sunlight spilled across the floor. I walked to the back and opened the balcony door. I heard waves. Real waves. Not the roar of Karen's anger. The ocean didn't demand anything. The ocean didn't shame me. It just existed. I stood there and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safety. Not because I was suddenly wealthy, because I was free. Karen could scream, "Get out," but she couldn't follow me here. Ryan could posture, but he couldn't intimidate contracts. Aunt Linda could cry, but she couldn't cry her way into my deed. Tyler could smirk, but he couldn't smirk his way past law. That afternoon, my phone lit up like a slot machine. Karen called. Then Ryan. Then Linda. Then Tyler. I ignored them until I received a text from an unknown number. "Emma, call your mother. This is serious." It was Ryan. He was using a different phone. I didn't respond. Then another message. "I heard you got something from Grandpa. We need to talk." Linda. Then, "Don't be greedy. Family is family." Tyler. It took less than 24 hours for the inheritance sent to travel through their network. I realized they'd found out through a distant relative who worked at the funeral home, or through gossip, or through their endless obsession with what they thought was theirs. They didn't ask if I was okay. They didn't apologize for the night before. They simply reached for my pocket. Karen left a voicemail. Her voice had transformed. She sounded soft, almost fragile. "Emma," she said. "Baby, I didn't mean it. I was upset. You know how stressful things have been. We need to talk." Then her tone sharpened slightly. "It's about your grandfather. There are things we should discuss as a family." The last 3 words were poison. As a family. That meant as a committee. That meant as a pack. I called Michael Bennett. He answered quickly. "Emma," he said. "Is everything okay?" I said. "They found out." Bennett's voice remained calm. "I expected they might," he replied. "Remember the clause. Do not argue, do not negotiate, do not explain. Document and route communication through counsel." I asked, Can I block them? He said, yes. And if they threaten you, call me immediately. I took a deep breath and sent one email to Karen, Ryan, and Linda. I wrote, all future communication regarding my grandfather's trust or my finances must go through my attorney, Michael Bennett, of Bennett and Cole. I did not add emojis. I did not add explanations. I did not add feelings. Just boundaries. Then I blocked their numbers. Tyler tried calling from yet another phone. Blocked. Ryan tried emailing insults. Forwarded to Bennett. Karen tried sending a long message about how hurt she was. Deleted. Aunt Linda posted vague drama on social media about ungrateful children. I didn't respond. The silence was my power. 2 days later, Karen showed up at my old apartment building. The neighbor texted me, your mom is here looking for you. Karen had never cared enough to visit me there before. Now she was suddenly determined. I thanked the neighbor and said I wasn't home. I didn't tell Karen where I was. I didn't owe her my address. I didn't owe her my new life. That night, I sat on the balcony of my beach house with a blanket around my shoulders. The ocean air was crisp. The sky was huge. I thought about how Karen had screamed, get out, like she was banishing a servant. I thought about Ryan's smug certainty. I thought about Tyler's laugh. Then I thought about Grandpa Henry and the way he'd planned to have this moment. He didn't just leave me money. He left me a future protected from predators disguised as relatives. A week later, I received one final voicemail from Karen. Her voice sounded tired, as if she'd run out of tactics. Emma, she said, I miss you. I didn't mean what I said. Come home. She paused. Then she added, almost involuntarily, we can talk about everything. Everything meant money. Everything meant access. Everything meant control. I listened once and deleted it. Not because I hated her, because I finally understood her. People like Karen don't miss you. They miss the door you used to leave unlocked. They miss the version of you who apologized for having needs. They miss the power they had over your guilt. I didn't buy the beach house to prove anything. I bought it to breathe, to heal, to live without being taxed by other people's chaos. If you've ever been kicked out, remember, DNA is not a deed. Nobody owns your future. Karen screamed, get out. So I did. And the next morning, I built a home with no room for manipulation. Sometimes the most powerful goodbye is the one you never say. The best revenge is peace.